Alrighty, so this is the 5th episode of the Out of the Woods podcast. I'm still getting used to, speaking and hosting these things because it's kind of weird. Usually I'm on the other side of it, but super excited to have Sam Lewkowict. I think I said it right. I asked him beforehand and he clarified for me. It doesn't sound like that when you see it spelled. Co-founder with his brother of Black Wolf. They also run a fulfillment 3PL as well. And lifelong entrepreneur from what I know, but excited to have you on. We got a chance to first meet, I think, in the Zoom room of the Forbes 30 under 30, like 2-3 years ago. What were you guys? I think your brother was only like 23 and maybe you were 25 or something.
Yeah. He was 23. He tied for the youngest person on the list. I told him he was the youngest, so he got that.
Was that a dream for you guys, or was it just kind of like another random thing?
It wasn't a dream, but it was something I really wanted. Like, it was one of those things where, like, I'll put this in my bio on social. I'll take it because it was really cool. It's an accolade that if you don't pay a PR firm or use any favors to get into is really cool. And we didn't. We just sent it in. We got nominated for it by a friend of ours who had worked with us, and we got it. And I was unbelievably shocked because I know that they prefer people who are like 28, 29 because they're running out of chance to get it. So 23, 25, it was awesome. And my parents loved it. So that was awesome too.
I think it's like a funny thing because when you get it, you get a lot of like hate from people like, oh, you paid to get on it, or you have a PR firm, you did this, you did that. But I don't know. I mean, the people that I know have been on it have been pretty impressive people that deserve to be on it,
I think anytime there's a list or a hierarchy, people tend to shit on it for whatever reason. But at the end of the day, like I haven't met anyone personally who's been on that list who's not impressive and doesn't deserve to be on it. So I think it counts for something.
Yep. No, it was pretty funny. And it's like, Forbes is just one of those things. It's like, rappers rap about it. Like your parents know what it is. It's just one of those like iconic kind of things. So it was a fun thing. But I think more than anything, it helped us find other interesting young people to kind of learn from and connect with. And did you go to any like the in-person sessions or things that they did?
I don't think I did. No, I didn't have a chance to. Did you?
No, I didn't do it. They're doing something like Detroit or something, but haven't had a chance. But
I just reached out to you instead. I didn't need to.
Exactly. How's it been like working? You basically have been kind of partners with your brother your whole life. It seems like you guys have been kind of attached at the hip. What's it like to kind of get born into a business partner right away?
I actually love working with family. So I grew up working with Alex, my brother. I now work with my wife, Danielle. My sister's going to be joining soon. My dad's been involved in lots of our businesses. He's come on board to do certain things for them. I like working with family for 2 reasons. Number one, the relationship, and it's not correct in every case, but in this case, the relationship is stronger than the business. So it's very unlikely, at least in my case and in my family, that the relationship or the business was going to fall apart because of a disagreement. When Alex and I have a disagreement, we sit down with my mother and we solve it. Like, that's what happens. We don't just quit and part ways. That never happened. It didn't matter how much we fought or how much we disagreed on. Number two, the trust. No one's screwing anybody. I'm not screwing my brother, definitely not my wife, not my sister, not my dad. We can trust everybody. It's all a verbal agreement, everything. And so in that context, you have the trust, you have the solidity of the partnership. And then I happen to be related to some very, very smart people, much smarter than me. So I'm very lucky. I mean, you know this. I'm very lucky in that I have these people that I trust and can rely on, but they're also super high performing. And so to me, it's a no-brainer. Alex and I started working together when we were like 8, selling jerseys and like stuffed animals and stuff.
Were these like legit jerseys, or did you like bring them in from China?
No, I brought them in from China. Yeah, they were not legit, but it was still the hustle. It was the original drop shipping hustle before I even knew what drop shipping was, before it was even a thing. But we did car detailing together. And then obviously Black Wolf became the first serious business we launched. So maybe not every family is right for this, but for me, I 100% vouch for it.
Does it make it hard to trust outsiders who aren't part of the family? Like if you were to bring in like a VP or somebody really senior in the business, does it take like a lot of time to get past the fact that they're not part of the inner circle?
I think in general, I should take a little bit more time when trusting people. I think I'm a little bit too fast to trust sometimes. In my personal case, I think my brother's actually the same way too. So no, honestly, I think we've been sometimes too quick to trust somebody. And I think in general, people are not trying to screw you over. I don't think people like go through their lives looking to screw people over. I think people have their own interests and you need to make sure those interests are aligned. And if they are, amazing. The difference between people and my brother or my wife is that even if our interests individually are not aligned, they're aligned because we care about each other intrinsically. So you avoid that whole need to align incentives with family. Whereas when you're dealing with someone who's not your family, you must have aligned incentives or else it won't work.
Are you and your brother always like equal partners in things? And if so, how do you break the tie? Is it really your mom coming in and kind of deciding who's right and who's wrong?
Now, the way we do it is, so yeah, we are always equal. We just wait till we both agree on something or else it's not the right thing to do. So a lot of things have just not happened because we both don't sign on to it.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've always, with SwagUp, I've always been kind of the majority partner, given that I started it by myself.
Right.
So it's like a whole different, I would love to have like that go-to partner. And I do with Helen, but it's also different because I, started the company by myself. So I just naturally have a lot of the
Right.
equity. So, but at the same time, it also kind of feels like everyone's looking to me for the answer sometimes. So it's, different kind of setup.
I feel that. I mean, I don't personally make a move unless my wife Danielle sort of has weighed in on it and gives me her opinion. I really trust her opinion. Every time I have not listened to her advice, it ends up biting me in the ass. I find she really has a good sense.
It's crazy. Helen's the same way. There's some sort of intuition that they have
I
that's
know.
just always on point.
Yeah, you got lucky. You got lucky. You found someone who always knows what to do. Yeah, no, it's perfect. Sometimes I really do wait until she's leaned into a decision or weighed in on a decision before I make a move because it's just so important to me that she's looked into it and has a vibe check on it.
Yep. I agree. So how'd you guys get into, I mean, I talked to your brother, I think about this like a year ago, but skincare, like it's such a random thing, you're like a manly dude, you're talking about facial scrubs and face masks. Like what happened?
Yeah. I mean, like skincare was never my thing, and I would never have gone into skincare. What happened was we got an opportunity to get into someone else's aftershave product business. And the product was great. Like it got rid of razor bumps. My brother and I both had razor bumps, got rid of those. It really worked. We're like, wow, we can sell this. So we tried to sell it to barbershops. No one wanted it because yeah, the product worked, but it looked really ugly. The packaging was awful and the smell was not good. Just didn't work. And so when we approached the guy and said, there's probably a market in the US to sell this, but not just this, like all kinds of men's skincare product. And we could attack the market by basically trying to change the existing skincare industry to adjust to men's habits versus what it was doing, which was trying to change men's habits to buying women's skincare. So like what every other brand would do is they'd be like, here's this organic acai toner. And a guy looks at them and says, I have no idea what a toner is, but I have like breakouts. Please help me with this.
Yeah.
Men don't understand. They don't want to use 18 steps in their routine. They don't care about all the random esoteric ingredients. What they care about is problem solution and a really, really solid product. So what we thought is we could launch the first like high-end men's product that's super masculine. All the masculine products in the market are much more downstream. You're talking Dr. Squatch, you're talking Old Spice, Buchanan, like your $9.99 body wash. That's the ultra masculine stuff. But the higher end stuff like Kiehl's and Anthony's and Jack Black and others, they're definitely for men, but they take a softer approach, a more unisex approach almost. And so we thought, let's launch the most masculine brand possible, but also high-end skincare, and also make it solution focused and gear it around the habits of guys. We brought this whole idea and thesis, we brought to this guy who was selling the product, and he thought it was a terrible idea. And so
we screw it, let's just buy your formula.
We honestly, we developed a new formula altogether. We completely started from scratch. Step one, we looked up how to make a product. Turns out you need to go to a contract manufacturer. So we looked up contract manufacturers. We call like 5 of them. We stumble upon this really nice family-owned business. They've since, exploded in size, but a family-owned business in Florida, Boca Raton. It's called Cosmetic Solutions. They're fantastic. We've been with them since then. We still work with them, and we would never work with anyone else because they're so good. They've been really good to us, and we basically sort of figured it out as we went along.
I feel like there's been a lot of like growth over the last 5 years, and like these men's kind of like catering to the needs of men that normally wouldn't want to admit that they're using like these things. For example, you have like Keeps, and you have some like the erectile dysfunction type stuff. There's all these kind of categories that are finding more prevalence, because a lot of it's because it's like direct to consumer and you can get it mailed to your house and do these, because most guys don't want to go to like a store and admit that they're buying like skincare products or this and that. Did you see that kind of like wave potentially happening, or trying to like jump on that in some way? Has that been a tailwind?
I think the men's skincare trend is a real thing. I do not think it will be as big as everyone says it's going to be. I think skincare specifically is very limited, because how many steps are you going to get a guy to actually do? Like Danielle in her bathroom has like 50 products. There's like 18.
I know some guys that also have 50 products.
You really? Okay. I haven't come across these guys. I'd love to sell to them. But I think with men, like for instance, we had a rule, you couldn't call it a facial cleanser. You had to call it a face wash. Same thing, but you're making it less skincare-y and much more around the idea of sort of grooming. Men understand that they have to wash, men understand that they have to groom, but men also understand, like, I have acne. What is the very specific solution to get rid of this? I have oily skin. What is the specific solution to get rid of this? I have dry skin. Like, what do I do about that? So you're not selling them skincare, you're selling them solutions. And I know that's kind of just saying you're positioning it differently. And to an extent, that's true. But we're also expanding beyond skincare. So you have body care products, you have hair care products, devices. Like there's a whole region of the bathroom that you can take over for a guy without just being skincare, as long as you're attacking, solutions, specific solutions to specific problems.
Well, I think the other interesting part is you started this company in Canada, but you were started the manufacturing over here in the States. And I guess why were you so kind of gung ho on coming over to the US as quickly as possible and running the company from here? What was it about the US that is super exciting for you?
I mean, too many reasons. The US, it's a bigger market, 10x the size. It's much more free and easy to do business here. There's many more factories and suppliers. It's fully English here. It's just easier to do business. You don't have to put French packaging. There's less regulation. And if you want to be an entrepreneur and you want to make it, you come to the US. Like this is the place to come and make it happen. And so we always knew we wanted to be in the US. So we started by making our products in the US and building our relationships in the US and slowly but surely building a larger and larger footprint. But Canada is not known for its entrepreneurial, foundation. That's what the US is. And we felt that from day one.
Makes sense. Well, as I said, kind of leading up to it, the whole point of this podcast, in my opinion, is to help as many teams kind of, navigate these uncertain economic times. We just talked about before we got on, Walmart just readjusted their earnings outlook for the rest of the year down 11% when they thought they'd be flat or maybe slightly up. Every day there's new economic data points coming out in terms of, inflation, has it peaked? You have production and, purchasing kind of volume going down, like all different stuff that are kind of pointing towards a potential recession. And like, how are you thinking about, your business and your category within the landscape of these things? And do you say, to other entrepreneurs, like, hey, just focus on your business, those things don't really matter? Or do you look at those on a daily basis or weekly basis and try to figure out like, how's this going to impact us and how do we need to adapt?
Well, I like to look at it in terms of inflection points. So I think looking at economic data every single day would drive you crazy. But I think when there's a directional change, it matters. And there's a directional change happening. People are going, it hasn't happened yet. I don't know if anyone who's tried to book a vacation in the last 2 months knows this. Everyone's still
Travel
buying.
spends up 34%, I saw from Bank of America.
Yeah, I know. I'm trying to book a honeymoon. It's impossible. So it hasn't happened yet, but it's going to happen to a certain extent. People are going to stop spending as much money. Most likely. I could be wrong. Everyone could be wrong, but most likely that's going to happen. In the event that that does happen, which industries are going to be affected and are you in that industry? I think that skincare and cosmetic products, especially ones for things like acne and dry skin, I think those are actually going to do decent in recession. The reason I think they'll do well is because you can't go on a trip, maybe you can't buy a brand new car, you're not buying a new house because mortgage rates are too high. Like you have $14 to buy a product like that you have. And I don't necessarily know how much that changes. I spoke to our manufacturer, 0809 was great for them. I've spoken to a lot of other people in the space and 0809 were really good in the skincare industry. And I think it was for that same reason, which is people could afford really small things. They couldn't necessarily buy big things. So that's how I look at it. If I were, let's say, in a more upscale brand, what's a good one? I don't know, maybe upscale apparel, maybe even that might benefit. But if I was in an industry where I relied on bigger ticket items, I might be a little more concerned. But at the same time, we might be more in a supply recession and less a demand recession. Like, I don't know. So that's how we look at it. We're not really sure. We're just taking it by month at this point.
Have you guys adapted, the strategy at all in terms of, pricing or how you go to market or who you're marketing to and where, has it evolved at all in the last, 3 to 6 months?
Well, the last time there was the last two like major economic scares, I'm thinking like the height of COVID and 0809. I wasn't around for 0809, but this is what everyone tells me is that ad prices got much cheaper. Huge opportunity. If your industry is not going to get hyper affected just generally by price sensitivity or recession sensitivity, when media gets cheaper, frankly, it's time for you to lean in. So that's what we're thinking about. We're starting to think about how we lean in when media gets cheaper. We're really hoping it gets cheaper, especially TV, because this is the time. You saw Walmart, they pulled back their earnings outlook. Lots of companies are doing this. Lots of companies, the first thing that they maybe start to look is some of their awareness marketing spend, some of their other media spend, like generally ad prices go down in these times. This time could be different, of course. So we're looking about how we lean in. And then the other thing is we're not changing prices. So we looked at potentially our prices, but here's the problem. You're in stagflation right now. You can't lower your prices because your price inputs have gone up. Your cost inputs have gone up. So our hands are tied. What we didn't do is raise prices, which we probably should have done, but we didn't do that just because in this environment, we were worried about what that would do to performance.
What are you seeing on like, the Facebook, Google, TikTok, Instagram side? Like, are those big, channels for you guys to acquire new customers? And, were you impacted as much by some of those like iOS changes? Have you found ways to kind of mitigate for it? And are you seeing the costs come down at all? Like, are some of your competitors kind of either going out of business or dropping spend, and you guys have kind of held it flat or started to grow it?
We're growing. I don't know if it has to do because our CPMs haven't gone down. So the cost of impressions have, if anything, gone up, honestly, in the last little bit. They've continued to or stayed flat. Our performance has increased because we happen to unlock a lot of things in the last few months. But when I talk to other founders and I talk to people in the fulfillment space and ask about their volumes and everything like that, it's pretty obvious on a macro scale, everyone's volumes are down a lot, like maybe, as much as half.
Yeah.
And
I've been hearing like 20 to 30% for like e-commerce brands in terms of just being down year over year.
oh, at least down by half. But there's a lot of people I know who just stopped marketing or who closed. So honestly, I'd be surprised if it's as high as only down 20 or 30% from what I'm seeing.
And why TV? Like, is that new for you guys? Like, what do you see as the opportunity in TV? And is it, is it an opportunity as well because of just the barriers to entry with the cost and being able to access kind of a different market that maybe the competitors can't?
So I'm not an expert at TV advertising. Our partners are. We just launched a device that retails for between $60 and $70. So it's the first time we've been able to really leverage TV advertising to market a product like this. With a $15 body wash, it's too hard to make the numbers work. But to make TV work, you have to have huge retail presence. So you have to be prepared to start to blast it out into every retailer, mass and even boutique, but really mass.
And why is that? Just because to optimize kind of the attention and, so that you can also then go buy it when you're out of the store, you'll recognize it.
It's what allows you to scale TV because you're not going to get a positive ROAS most of the time, at least on direct TV attribution. You're going to break even if you're doing well, and then retail drives all the profit, all that awareness. You want to capture it everywhere. So you have D2C, you have Amazon, and you have retail. You have to be where the customer is shopping when you're just doing that mass awareness blast. It's not so targeted like Facebook.
So have you guys gotten into retail as much? I mean, a lot of the retailers are overstocked. It seems like they're trying to liquidate some of their, goods, maybe less so on the hard good, on the, skincare and personal care side, because it's like high turnover. They can constantly sell it.
Right.
But, the conversations you're having with retailers, like how are they thinking about the next, year or 2 years? And are they looking to bring in new product all the time and, sell through data, anything like that you see?
They're projecting lower sell-through. They all overstocked. They all have to recalibrate now. That's what happened. They all overstocked. They were all bullish on the continued growth. It didn't materialize, obviously. And that's what they're backpedaling on a little bit now. They all want to try new things. Here's the problem. Every buyer is only as good as their last one or two category refreshes. So it's not about the retailer. It's about the buyer's willingness for risk. If the buyer wants to take a huge risk on you, and you don't materialize, that looks really bad for them and they can get cycled out. So it's so much easier to go to Manscaped and say, like, you want to expand 5 more SKUs in the category versus bringing on Black Wolf, who's an extra a brand new 5 SKUs, unknown quantity. I think that's what's happening. And so you have to make a real case to the retailers. How much media are you driving? What's your conversion? How much product are you selling now? What are you projecting this to sell? Things like that. And they need to really believe in your story and believe in your business to want to try new things. But I think generally I'm seeing much more conservative behavior than trying new things.
I mean, if you guys are looking at things like TV and scaling paid and then potentially getting into retail, but then you also have this kind of like macroeconomic backdrop, how do you think about demand planning, purchasing, inventory buys? Like there's just so many factors, it seems, at play for, how you guys decide how much, capital to put into inventory. Are those hard decisions for you guys?
They're less so now because we're getting better at demand forecasting, but 80% of our lead time is only 10% of our cost. That's the bottle that our product goes in. And so that we have to overstock on. And it's an easier decision to make. It used to be even easier when containers were $3,000 per container and there were no tariffs. But
they're coming down a bit now, right? I mean, they went all the way up to 15 to 20. Now they're back down to like 7, 8 or something.
Yeah, they'll go back up during holiday though. But yes, they've definitely come down. It's still an easy decision, with a bottle, each of our bottles, maybe, I don't know, 20, 30 cents, 40 cents, depending on the product.
Is there a way to bring that into the US from a plastic manufacturing standpoint? We were talking about how Mike from Simple Modern is actually building US based manufacturing for plastic bottles. I wonder if there's an opportunity for you to kind of, optimize the supply chain on that side as well.
We've been actually continuously looking into it. Also, Mexico. We definitely would like to reshore a lot of what we do. Here's the problem: it's not just cost; it's also quality. A lot of people don't think about in China, the cost is low, but they actually are really good at manufacturing. They make good stuff there. So it's a little risky to offshore to Mexico, for instance, even if the cost is right, which it isn't. The US, every single maker we've sourced from, the cost is threefold, fourfold what it needs to be. Like, we're not there yet. So that's a bit of an issue. So we have to import bottles. We got to get ahead of that. You stock up as many bottles as you need, and then we domestically manufacture our actual product, like the solutions that go in the bottle. So that can be done more variably as we need, scale up, scale down. That's why the relationship you have with your suppliers has to be amazing, because when we're in a bit of a panic and things are running really well and we need them to rush a run of 20,000 body washes for us, or 30,000 body washes, like they'll do what they have to do to make it happen. And that's just because of the close ties.
I mean, these last couple of years with COVID and just like, trying to forecast demand stuff have shown that you need a really nimble supply chain. Has that something that you've had to kind of like acquire that knowledge over the last few years? Like, have you even thought about, the bottles that you bring in, are they already printed with the formulas that are on them and the SKU that's going to go in there? Or do you try to keep them blank and then pad print or something in the US based on what formulations are going in? Or like, how are you trying to stay as nimble as possible?
We actually used to be more nimble because we had no money, so we had to be. But so we used to bring in bottles that were like more or less blank, and then we put the label of the ingredients on. The problem becomes that you need to make sure you're 100% in compliance, and as you get bigger, there are more and more ambulance chasing lawyers looking.
So when you're small, nobody cares. You don't have any money to pay them out.
Exactly. Anymore. But then people start coming after you, or so people tell me. But it's something that you have to start looking out for as you start to pass the $10 million year range and then $20 million year range. And when you start to get into those levels, people start noticing you, especially when you're on the retail shelves. That's when you start to become more of a target. So you have to be inch perfect with your compliance, with your ingredients, with your warnings, with your demarcations, like everything. So we can't do that anymore. But how we are nimble is we can't be nimble with bottles, but we can be nimble with product domestically. So one thing we did was our manufacturer asked us to sign like an LOI, and then they went and ordered all the components, the raw components. They stocked up big on them. So in the event that we needed more than we thought, they could manufacture it for. They were protected, we were protected. So I think things like that, little things where you give yourself room for variability, I think is really important now, especially when, we've had many scenarios where a container just is like a month late. Like, what are you supposed to do?
How have you guys thought about like financing the business? Has it been a lot of like working with your vendors to get terms? Has it been a lot of, lines of credit, credit cards, a combination of everything, outside funding? What's kind of the story from, funding Black Wolf over the years and then now, how are you thinking about it?
So Black Wolf is a business that over a customer's lifetime is profitable, but you have to finance that customer on a cash flow basis.
How long does that take to get to that point?
It ranges, honestly. Probably we're under 12, we're under a year now. So maybe even better than that. So you have to finance that customer on a cash flow basis. The problem becomes traditional financing vehicles don't make a ton of sense for that, because you're going to go raise like $1 million. When you're doing $1 million a month, you're going to end up, that's going to get tied up in cash flow, financing yourself over like 1 or 2 months of revenue. It's going to be tied up in inventory. It's going to be tied up in receivables. It's going to be tied up in all kinds of things. And you're going to get caught out. So ideally what you would have is someone financing all your acquisition in month 1, and then you only really have to pay it back 9 months later, 10 months later, 11 months later. And you do that every single month, right? That doesn't exist. So what we did is we brought on partners who finance the business. They work alongside us, run the business, and in turn they can earn equity. And that was a partnership we formed with one of our angel investors. It was a ton of experience in e-commerce, in retail, in consumer products. And that's worked for us because we don't have to go out to the markets and finance ever again, really, not until exit. So it's a non-traditional funding path. I think it makes a ton of sense, especially if you're a brand that isn't profitable on a first order basis.
This is basically a group that's there to kind of backstop you with as much capital as you need because they have the equity upside, and they're just looking at your modeling and saying, hey, yeah, this is profitable. This is good growth. Let's keep investing in it. And they're there to kind of scale with you along the way.
Yeah, the financial mechanism is basically they incur any losses, but they also get to receive any profits you make. So effectively, you can imagine it as they take in the revenue and they pay for all the expenses. So it functions very similarly if you think about it like a licensing deal, on paper,
Yep.
even though it's not what it is.
Yep. So then how do you, when it comes to like modeling out the future, like revenue and kind of showing them this and just for your own sake, like what are some of the things that you've learned over the last few years around kind of like revenue modeling and cost modeling and how to build out, a defensible kind of, drivers based model? Is that something that you spend a lot of time on trying to figure out?
It's not something I personally spend a lot of time on, but it's something that people in the business have spent a lot of time on in our business. One thing we looked at was we had to come up to a scenario where the customers really did pay back, and they paid back within a year, and they paid back, at least 2 to 3x what you invested in them in the first place. The juice had to be worth the squeeze to sit on all that cash for so long per customer. So we had to really model that out. And it's not so easy actually to understand what your payback is, because you acquire a customer at a certain point, you know what their average order value is, you have a theory of how often they order, but you don't totally know. And you're running all kinds of different tests with different cohorts. So you got to wait until those cohorts mature 10 months. So it could take you like 10 months to build a financial model. It's very difficult. So a lot of what it is basically making projections, estimates, and then tracking each cohort along those estimates at every month marker and seeing how close you are, how far away you are, and then adjusting accordingly. And then over time,
was there like a certain moment where you kind of like got enough confidence in the business to be like, hey, let's start investing way more on the acquisition side? Like this is all going to make sense and prove itself out. Like how'd you get that data to feel confident?
Yeah, what happened was we actually put projections together that would have made financial sense if we hit them, and we were not beating them. And then we had 3 or 4 months of customers in retrospect that beat our projections over the first 2 or 3 months. So the trajectory line was so good, so much above what we had already projected would have been good enough, that we said, okay, at this current rate, all these customers are going to be profitable for us. We can lean into this. And we kept doing it, and it kept staying on that trend line.
And what dictates typically, the cohorts that are doing much better? Is it the traffic mix of like where you're finding them? Is it the offer? Is it the, the on-site experience and the products? Like what were you kind of testing and changing that finally got you to like cohorts that were just much more attractive?
Well, one of our dominant models is subscription. So there were a few things about it that made performance go up. So anyone who's in the subscription space will probably tell you the same thing, which is flexibility, allowing them to pick what they want, which products you're suggesting to onboard with for the first shipment, and making sure that the sizes aren't off calibrated. Like for instance, our scrub lasts way too long. So putting that in the first order that people got caused a lot of churn, because people are like, I still have scrub, I don't want more. So we got rid of that, allowing people to have flexibility, allowing people not to, instead of canceling, maybe you cancel 2 of your 3 products and keep on going. That reduced. So all these little things, and then again, launching new products. It makes existing customers add to their subscription. You can add a shampoo, we launched a shampoo, you can add a shampoo to your subscription. Awesome. And that caused the average order value of a subscriber to go up, but it also increased the LTV, because we're constantly chasing CAC to LTV and payback, reducing payback.
Yep.
So we're basically constantly trying to adjust all of those. So to answer your main question, how do we know a cohort's doing well? If a cohort has a reduction in CAC, which means the offer is good enough for them to convert at a higher rate. And then if the customer increases their purchase frequency, meaning they stay on for more shipments throughout the year, which means they're not churning, it's usually a result of we've nailed down the order frequency, we've nailed down what's in the bundle, or we've nailed down like customization and variability for them so that they don't want to just cancel, they change it. Like that's usually what does it.
Gotcha. Is that something that you were able to build into, Shopify custom, or you have engineers, you work with like dev shops that kind of help build out some of these flows that are a little bit more proprietary to what you guys are doing?
Well, we actually do a lot of it in house, and then we work with some partners in terms of the applications on the back end. Like we use Order Groove as our subscription backend, but in house, doing the testing, implementing the changes, we do that all in house.
Gotcha. You're kind of in the middle of the spectrum of trying to in-house things versus trying to outsource things. Like what's been kind of like your journey on, because I know you guys have run your own 3PL, you've done some product development. Like where do you stand on like in-housing these things as a small or medium size, direct to consumer brand versus, leveraging as many other third parties as possible?
So I feel actually quite strongly on this. I think it really depends on the size or how big you are, because then you have to look at it as a return. If you're doing $1,000 a day in revenue, $30,000 a month, like what is a $10,000 a month employee in-house going to be able to do for you that's going to make it worth it? There's no way. They can't improve your performance 30%. Like it's unlikely. But if you're doing $250,000 a month and you bring in a $10,000 employee and they can improve your performance marginally over a outsourced solution enough, well, there's enough revenue where they could optimize their salary out of the equation. And so that's one thing. I think you have to look at how big you are before investing into any in-house solution, because you need to have the scale where they can actually have enough impact to make things better, that pays for themselves. The other thing is anything creative I would start with. So video production, website creative, social, like this is like the heart and soul of your business. An agency, it's very hard for an agency to give that much heart to what you do. They can give expertise, but they're not going to have the emotional connection. And so when you in-house that, you feel it. Like you could feel the brands that do their own social, they push the boundaries more, they take more risks, you could feel it. For technical things, I think that you can definitely outsource that. So for instance, fulfillment. I recommend everyone outsource that. The only reason we didn't is because my brother's obsessed with logistics and begged me to do it, begged me to bring it in-house. But I don't see any reason why a brand really should be doing fulfillment in-house. I think contract manufacturing, like there's no need to bring that in-house. Forget the fact that the investment is insane, but a contract manufacturer is going to do a better job than you're going to do. And you don't need to have like passion for the brand to be able to make a formula properly or to be able to make another product properly. Same thing like freight broker, you don't need to bring those things in-house, but anything creative, anything related to design, that's where I kind of recommend you bring it in-house when you can.
Do you think there's like inflection points for some of those other things where it starts to make sense? You just think it never really makes sense. Like even like Apple, for example, uses 3PLs to, fulfill all their stuff. And you could say, okay, Apple's a $2 trillion company. Like, why don't they run some of these things themselves? And they're just like, hey, we make great products and we market them and people love it. And we're not in the distribution business. But do you think there is a moment in time for brands where, they should try to take on some of these things?
I think the first moment where you can look at it is when the economics make sense, meaning you're big enough where you can implement a change, you can bring something in-house where the cost to bring it in-house would actually bring you marginal benefit. So for instance, if you're moving 10 orders a day, so 300 orders a month, it's never going to pay to, it's never going to necessarily pay to bring it in-house. You got to get a lease, you got to hire at least 1 or 2 employees, you got to get a forklift, you got to buy some racking. Before you know it, you're in it for $10,000 a month. How can you make 300 orders a month work at that scale? So first you got to wait until you're, say, let's at 10,000 orders a month, and it would cost you $1 an order. Okay, well then it gets interesting. You can look at it and say, okay, well it makes economic sense to bring it in-house, but then you have to ask yourself, do I want to take time away from buying ads, away from optimizing the website, away from making new products, to worry because, Bob didn't show up to the warehouse that day and now your orders aren't going out, dealing with that. Like, do you want to be dealing with that, or do you want to be focusing on what you're good at? I think that they become massive distractions. And so the first thing you look at is, can it make financial sense? And if it can make financial sense, do you even want to do it?
I think the trick too with like, does it make financial sense, is sometimes that it can look really good on paper when you have a model that is up and to the right. But if you have a scenario like right now where e-commerce brands are down 20, 30, 40, 50%, they projected, oh, we're just going to keep growing. And, these fixed costs are worth it because marginally we're going to be saving money. The flexibility of using third parties that you can always scale up and down really quickly. And in this environment, I'm sure that some of the investments that companies made that they thought were, profitable for them or the right financial decisions actually have turned around to bite them in the ass because they're kind of stuck in a way now.
I agree with that. I mean, think about it. If you invest in your own manufacturing line because you think you're going to save 30 cents an order, but you need 100,000 orders a month to make it work, and suddenly you're doing 50,000 orders a month, you're kind of screwed. Like,
and you go from like being able to sleep well at night because you have this nice business that's doing well to like, oh shit, like I thought we were doing well, now we have all this fixed cost that I have to cover, and I'm stressed out about it. Have you talked to some other e-commerce operators? Like, what if, obviously these last, couple of years have been pretty challenging because the cost of everything has gone up. Things have taken longer. It's harder to, to acquire a customer. Like, you guys seem to have navigated it pretty well, but have you been hearing from just other e-commerce operators or direct consumer companies that are just, really struggling right now? And like, kind of what's the pulse in the market?
No one ever wants to tell you the truth. So what you do hear a lot of is, since iOS 14, we've had to scale down, and ads are tough. I think what's happening in reality is I think people can't get financing, they can't get inventory fast enough, their cash conversion cycles are getting worse, their ad prices are definitely going up, and consumers are converting less. For sure, that's happening. So I think you have a confluence of things that are making it really hard to run a business unless you have a team that's dedicated to optimizing. I really do think these like 3-man shows are getting harder and harder and harder. It used to be like 5 years ago, you could be 3 guys on your couch and draw and build a $20 million a year business. You totally could. And I'm sure it can be done today. I'm not saying it can't, but I do think you have to fight for every dollar now. It's not as easy as it used to be. So you can get, great CPAs on Facebook. Like Facebook's not dead. You have to work for it. We have 3 people working on content full time. We have an editor full time. We have, 3 people optimizing our ads. We have an agency working on ads. Like, we have so many people constantly adjusting. What Alex and I used to just kind of look at every Thursday and be like, what should we scale? What should we not? That used to work. I don't think it's working anymore.
Would you categorize your company at this point as a marketing arbitrage, like where you're just constantly optimizing for attention and great creative, or is it really still very much about the product and the experience?
I think it's about the product and the experience. I think at the end of the day, like you can't arbitrage your way out of a shit product. Like you gotta make a really good product that people like and review well. Like there's no secrets anymore. Amazon, it's very hard to get fake reviews on Amazon. They've basically
starting to crack down pretty big on that now.
Like super hard. I heard that if your email's on the account, the merchant account, and you have someone who's in your phone leave a review, that there's a good chance they'll know it was a friend of yours and they'll block the review and flag it. So you can't hide anymore. So bad products will get exposed, and eventually the party will end for bad products with good marketing. You have to have great product.
Yeah. I mean, that was very much like the early 2010s, like drop shipping off Alibaba businesses, like just reselling the same products that everyone else was getting. And, I think it's been interesting to see kind of the influencers pop off with their brands now, because they're actually very good products. Like Kim Kardashian and them have built incredible brands that can stand on their own that are just as good as the other retailers and stuff. So
influencers have to build good businesses now. I mean, like honestly, my favorite example is Doug DeMuro's business. Do you know Doug DeMuro?
Yeah, the car guy. I watch his videos on YouTube.
Yeah, me too. So he has cars and bids, and obviously, I think that's a sick business. It's a super interesting business too, and it's a great platform. I don't know if you ever browsed it before, but it's a really good platform. So these influencers are building these really, really good businesses, like you said. But I think if they just put shit product out there, I think it would be exposed right away. People wouldn't buy it.
Have you guys thought about? I mean, again, like talking about like distractions potentially. Have you thought about white labeling products for influencers, or do you guys use influencers to go to market at all?
I kind of wish we did. We're not good at it. It's not in our skill set. For whatever reason, we've never really found a way to make it work necessarily. What we're best at is operating a business, making really good product, and trying to optimize through traditional channels, basically, if that makes sense.
Yep.
And so we're going to continue to do that. There will become a point where I think starting to bring celebrities on board makes a ton of sense. I think like Manscaped for the first time brought a celebrity on board. They brought Pete Davidson on. And I think it made a ton of sense. So I think that's the same story for us. I don't know if it's going to be like a micro influencer, like, sort of the 2015 to 2020 strategy, or if it's going to be someone huge, which I think would be awesome. But I think once we get to a certain inflection point in our business where we are big enough, I think that becomes a more serious discussion.
No, you've seen a lot more influencers become like equity partners and really get involved in the business more so than just, I just post a few pictures. Like Kevin Hart with Tommy John's a good example. And there's a whole bunch of other ones where there's a genuine passion for the brand and it makes sense for them and they can actually drive incredible results, and they're compensated appropriately for it. All right. Last couple of questions I got for, with the struggles that these like independent brands kind of faced over the last few years and will continue to face, do you think there's going to be kind of a lot more consolidation and M&A by some of these kind of conglomerates like Unilever and Procter and Gamble and stuff to kind of pick up, the Black Wolves of the world and other similar companies?
I think right now, assets are distressed or they're inexpensive. And anyone who hasn't been able to pick up cash in the most frothy market that anyone's ever seen in the past 5 years is going to be in a position where they probably have to sell. And they're going to be in a position to sell at multiples that are significantly lower than the mean. So I think you probably will see a lot more M&A right now. It makes so much sense. If you were a Procter and Gamble, wouldn't it make sense for you to pick up all this extra revenue at a discount? And good brands too. So I think you're going to see a lot of that. I think brands that are well capitalized are not going to want to sell in this environment because it's going to be so depressed in terms of revenue multiples. They're going to want to stick it out and emerge from this situation, with much less competition, in a strong position, able to finance if they want to, able to exit at good multiples if they want to. So I think it's going to be a case of a lot of M&A happening for brands who just cannot survive without the M&A.
Do you think that there's an opportunity for maybe a brand like you guys or someone else that's in a decent capital position to turn into a bit of a holding company to pick up some other, either competitors or smaller tangential type businesses that can kind of share customers? Or is it more, I think brands should stay in their lane and focus on their own stuff?
It's a really interesting question. We're not big enough yet for this, but if we were big enough, the way I would think about it is how to pick up additional product lines that are really great without having to go through the massive hassle. It's not necessarily about customers. You can acquire customers. Like you can do that all day long. And I don't even know how valuable a customer is compared to what it was 10 years ago. I think the allure of owning a customer, you want an email address. To a certain extent, you want an email address of someone who was at one point willing to buy your product. It's valuable, but it's not what people used to think it was. I think now it's about product lines, points of distribution, communication excellence, talent. If you have all those things already, and you can pick up an entire other brand, an amazing product line, and then incorporate it into your model and your points of distribution, that's the arbitrage I see. So I would probably be very into doing it if we'd have to be much bigger. We're not there yet.
I mean, it's more of kind of like an LTV thing of, we have this great customer base. Let's keep layering on great products that meet their needs and kind of build an ecosystem around this customer and where we fit into a lifestyle, I guess.
Yeah, for sure. And if they're close enough, if there's enough synergy, then yeah, the customer base starts to play into it because you can technically cross market to each other. Yeah. But and then I think if that were true, people would do way more brand collabs than they're doing now. If you could actually cross-sell, I think cross-selling is a lot harder than people pretend it is.
Yep. Cool. All right. Last question. So, I've been ending on this question for all the episodes so far, but, for the entrepreneur that's listening, and maybe they're one of the companies kind of impacted by everything going on. Maybe they made a few bad decisions or didn't plan correctly, didn't have the capital on hand and their back's kind of against the wall trying to figure out like where to go from here. What would be your advice for them kind of over these next few months?
I think assuming you're not in a situation where there's a gun to your head or you have certain payables and you're, on the precipice of ruin, I would take a step back, take a deep breath and start to think about, why did you get into this business? What are you doing that's right? What are you doing that's wrong? The macroeconomic environment and iOS 14 are simply masking a lot of the problems your business already had. You need to fix those problems and then you can fix the other problems. It's not going to be easy to raise capital right now. It's not going to be easy to do anything. So retrenching and fixing the fundamental flaws of your business first. And then when the opportunity arises, you're able to scale. But I'd be scaling down right now significantly and trying to reassess, because any business that was incredible, I think, is doing fine now, honestly. Most businesses I talk to that were in a great place are still doing okay now. They didn't get pummeled as much by iOS 14 and the macroeconomic issues. Like they were hurt, but they didn't get destroyed. I think by the way, I put Black Wolf in this category. We were really hurt by iOS 14 and all the other economic issues. Why? Because we have fundamental flaws in our business. We just spent the last year fixing those things, totally transformed the business, but it took a year of grinding it out. And we were at the precipice of danger a year ago. Like we were in this exact situation that I'm sure a lot of people are in. We had to retrench, we had to scale down, we had to find a partner who could help both finance us and work with us. And we spent a year fixing the entire business from the ground up. Now we're back to the scale we should be at. We're at record sales finally again, and we're trying to scale to the next level, but we're scaling a business that's tenfold better than what it was at the beginning. So that's what I would do. I'd take this opportunity to improve the fundamentals of the business and not just panic and try and find more money to throw at the same problem, because obviously something needs to be fixed.
Yep. I mean, in summary, just kind of take an honest assessment of where the business is and solve the things that are kind of drowning you, the holes in the boat, basically. So
yeah, because it's not just the macro environment issues. There's some fundamental things most likely.
100%. Cool. Well, we'll end on that. That was a ton of fun. I think super valuable information for, generally for business, owners, but also specifically in your space and direct to consumer e-commerce brands. And, you're super young, like me. I think we're both around 27 or so. So, excited to see kind of where you take things, both with Black Wolf, and I'm sure this isn't the last, business, whether this turns into some sort of larger entity or holding company, or you start something else again. Excited to kind of follow along the journey for the next, 10, 20, 30 years. So
yeah, ditto, brother.
Awesome, man. Thanks for coming on.
Of course.
Thanks for listening to the Out of the Woods podcast. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. More episodes are on the way. If you want to keep the conversation going, suggest questions, or nominate guests for future episodes, you can reach me on Twitter at Michael Martocci. Good luck and see you next time.